Welcome to the English version of the Discipling the Nations podcast. In this episode, we will be presenting an AI summary podcast of my commentary on the book of Ruth that will soon be published in Spanish. We hope also to publish an English version soon after. May you enjoy this wonderful story.
If you take a sweet, famous children's book and hold it up to a blacklight, well, you might be terrified to find complex blueprints and high-stakes courtroom dramas hidden in the ink.
Oh, absolutely. It completely changes how you see it.
Right. And today, we're shining a blacklight on one of history's most famous Sunday school romances, the Book of Ruth. We're opening up an ancient Jewish Targum and some deeply technical theological commentaries to prove that this isn't just, a simple love story.
Far from it, yeah.
So for you listening, whether you are prepping for a deep theological discussion or you're just insanely curious about ancient literature, we're going far beyond the surface today. We want to uncover the profound legal loopholes, the hidden symbols, and the literal genealogy of world history that's buried in this text.
And the sources we're diving into today, they really treat this text with an intense level of reverence. They peel back the layers to show us a narrative that is calm on the surface, but meticulously coded underneath.
Meticulously coded is a great way to put it.
Yeah, it's a story about cosmic redemption where absolutely nothing is wasted. I mean, the geography, the timing of the seasons, the agricultural laws, and especially the characters' names, they all carry massive historical and theological weight.
Well, to even grasp that ultimate redemption, we have to start with the crisis that kicks the whole thing off. So the story opens with a famine in Bethlehem. And if you know your Hebrew, Bethlehem translates literally to the house of bread.
Right.
So right away, the author's hitting us with this massive irony. There is no bread in the house of bread.
It's a stark contradiction. It tells the reader immediately that something is fundamentally broken in the spiritual landscape.
Yeah, it's not subtle.
Not at all. And the Jewish Targum, which is an ancient Aramaic translation and commentary on the Hebrew Bible, reveals a stunning historical context here. The Targum doesn't view this as a random weather event.
Like just a bad crop season or a drought.
Exactly. It states this was the 6th of 10 severe famines decreed from heaven, spanning from the days of Adam all the way to the coming of the Messiah.
Wow, the 6th of 10.
Yeah, so it was a specific divine judgment because the people were breaking their covenant with God.
Which brings us to our inciting incident, right? And the man of the house, Elimelech. Now, his name literally means God is my king.
Which is another irony.
Huge irony. Yet he acts as if there is no king at all. Instead of trusting his king during this covenantal famine, he packs up his wife Naomi and his 2 sons, and he flees the promised land. He goes down to Moab.
And understanding the weight of that decision really requires looking at the origins of Moab. The sources emphasize Moab's incredibly dark history.
It's a pretty rough origin story.
It really is. The nation descended from a man named Moab, who is the product of an incestuous relationship between Lot and his oldest daughter after they fled the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah.
So there's a lot of baggage there.
Oh, massive baggage. In the biblical narrative, Moab frequently serves as the ultimate symbol of unregenerate humanity. It represents sin, pride, and really just the toxic fallout of acting entirely outside of divine order.
Okay, let me make sure I'm wrapping my head around how bad this choice actually is. It's like someone waiting for a delayed delivery truck at a trusted grocery store. Yes, the shelves are empty and they're hungry.
Right, the famine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But instead of waiting for the store manager to fulfill the promise of food, they decide to sign a contract with a known violent crime syndicate just to get a sandwich. Like, he's trading his long-term covenant for short-term, deeply compromised survival.
That captures the betrayal perfectly. He is abandoning the place of promise for absolute spiritual compromise. And the tragic irony is that the compromise literally kills his family.
Right.
The commentaries point out the names of Elimelech's two sons, Mahlon and Chilion. In Hebrew, Mahlon essentially means sick or worn out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Chilion means pining or failing.
Wait, you don't name your kids sick and failing as just a casual choice? Like, who does that?
Yeah. Right. The sources suggest those names weren't just bad luck. They were a direct reflection of a family disconnected from their source of life. They are languishing. Elimelech dies. His sons marry Moabite women, Orpah and Ruth.
Right, the outsiders.
Yep, and then 10 years later, both sons die too. So Naomi is left entirely alone in a foreign land with her two widowed daughters-in-law.
And here's where the source material drops a detail that completely changes how I view this story. When we think of Ruth, the cultural image is usually this humble, impoverished peasant girl gleaning in a field.
Very pastoral, very simple.
Exactly. But the Targum makes a massive claim here. It states that Ruth was actually a royal princess. She was the daughter of Eglon, the king of Moab.
That is such a fascinating detail, and the Targum does something ancient commentaries often do. It connects narrative dots to make a theological point.
Okay, unpack that.
Well, by identifying Ruth as the daughter of the Moabite king, the ancient rabbis were raising the stakes of her eventual choice. They're telling us she isn't just a random peasant seeking a better economic situation. She represents the absolute peak of a rival kingdom.
So when Naomi decides to return Bethlehem, because the famine is finally over, and Ruth insists on going with her, Ruth is walking away from royalty.
She's leaving the palace for poverty.
Yeah. But Naomi doesn't just welcome her with open arms.
Yeah.
According to the commentaries, Naomi gives Ruth intense warnings about the realities of Jewish law. Like, she warns her about the Sabbath walking limits.
Right, and for those unfamiliar, that meant under religious law, you couldn't travel more than 2,000 cubits.
Which is what, like half a mile?
Yeah, roughly 3,000 feet on a day of rest. It's highly restrictive if you aren't used to it.
And Naomi also warns her about the 613 precepts of the Torah and even the 4 death penalties under the law. We're talking stoning, burning, the sword, and hanging on a tree.
Basically, Naomi is trying to talk her out of it. She is presenting the harshest, most rigid barriers to entry to test Ruth's resolve. She wants to see if Ruth is really serious.
Which means when Ruth gives that famous, beautiful speech, where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay.
And one everyone uses at weddings.
Yes, it takes on a totally different meaning. It's not just a poetic declaration of friendship. She is knowingly accepting the absolute harshest legal consequences. She is trading her royal status in a toxic culture to become a marginalized foreigner under a strict legal code just to follow Naomi and Naomi's God.
It is a calculated total surrender. She embraces a massive legal burden.
Okay, so Ruth survives the toxic wasteland of Moab. She takes on this immense legal burden, and they finally make it back to the promised land. But surviving the journey is one thing.
Right, the real challenge is just beginning.
Exactly. Now there are 2 destitute widows in an ancient patriarchal society. How do they actually avoid starving to death on day 1?
Well, the timing of their arrival holds the answer, and the sources note it is perfectly orchestrated. They arrive exactly at the start of Passover and the barley harvest.
Not a coincidence.
Definitely not. This begins a period known as the counting of the Omer.
Walk us through what that actually means on the ground for them.
So, the counting of the Omer is the 49-day countdown between the festival of Passover, which celebrates deliverance from slavery, and Shavuot, which celebrates the giving of the law at Mount Sinai.
Okay.
It is an agricultural and theological season defined entirely by themes of redemption and first fruits.
And because they're destitute, Ruth has to go find food immediately, so she goes out to glean in the fields. And I think it's really important for you listening to understand that this wasn't just begging.
No, not at all.
She is operating under specific biblical welfare laws from Leviticus 19 and Deuteronomy 24. These laws commanded landowners not to harvest the very corners of their fields. And if they dropped grain while harvesting, they were legally forbidden from going back to pick it up.
They had to leave it for the poor, the orphan, the widow, and the foreigner.
Yeah, it was a mandatory social safety net woven into the fabric of the society. And the sources connect this ancient agricultural law to a fascinating modern permaculture concept called the edge effect.
I love this connection.
Me too. So in ecology, the borders between 2 different ecosystems, like where a dense forest meets an open meadow, are the most diverse, vibrant, and productive areas. The biblical law essentially engineers that same reality for human society.
It really does. It turns the margins of the agricultural fields into a space of survival and vibrant life for the marginalized people.
But as she's gleaning in these margins, the text says her lot happened to fall in the field belonging to a wealthy man named Boaz. Now, I have to play the skeptic here. Is the text really asking us to believe this is just a massive coincidence?
Just dumb luck.
Yeah, like bumping into a billionaire on the street who just happens to be your long-lost cousin who wants to pay off your mortgage?
Well, in the Hebrew mindset, there is absolutely no such thing as blind luck. Every coincidence is pure divine providence moving the chess pieces.
Okay, that makes sense.
Boaz isn't just a random wealthy landowner. His name literally means "in him is strength," and he represents the ultimate goal.
The kinsman redeemer?
Exactly, the family protector. Ancient law established the kinsman redeemer as the relative who had the legal right and the financial resources to buy back lost family land and rescue family members from debt or slavery.
So he's essentially the hero waiting in the wings.
Yes. When Boaz sees Ruth in his field, he doesn't just tolerate her presence, he actively protects her. He commands his workers not to touch her and ensures she has plenty of grain.
I mean, think about your own life for a second. Imagine you've lost your spouse, your income, your home, and your citizenship. You are entirely at the mercy of a foreign system. That is the exact terrifying reality Ruth is facing.
And Boaz steps into that terror and extends the wings of his protection over her. The commentaries actually point out that this specific Hebrew imagery of wings mirrors the wings of the Almighty, Shaddai.
Wow, so he's acting as a stand-in for divine protection.
Precisely. Boaz effectively turns the dangerous, vulnerable margins of society into a sanctuary of divine rescue.
You'd think we'd get the romantic happily ever after right there in the barley field. The kinsman redeemer saves the day. Cue the credits.
Oh, they aren't safe yet.
Not even close. A massive legal obstacle stands in the way of their union, which moves the story from the agricultural margins to the ancient equivalent of a high-stakes courtroom.
The city gate. In the ancient Near East, the city gate wasn't just a doorway in a wall. It was the hub of government, commerce, and judicial decisions. Boaz goes to the gate and gathers a minyan, a formal quorum of 10 elders, to officially witness a highly complex real estate and marriage transaction.
Because the obstacle he has to clear is a closer relative. There's a guy who actually has first rights ahead of Boaz to buy Naomi's land and redeem the family. But the text doesn't even give us his real name.
It refuses to name him.
Right, it literally calls him Poloni Almoni, which the sources translate as Mr. So-and-so or Fulanito.
It's an intentional slight by the author. This man is so obsessively focused on preserving his own legacy and wealth that history forgets his name entirely.
And so Boaz presents the available land to Mr. So-and-so. And at first the guy is thrilled. He says he will absolutely buy this land. It reminds me of a tense corporate buyout, like Boaz slides a lucrative contract across the boardroom table, and Mr. So-and-so grabs the pen, ready to sign.
Well, absolutely. He thinks he's getting a great deal.
Right. Until Boaz casually points out a massive, poison pill liability clause hidden on page 2. Boaz is like, oh, by the way, the land comes with Ruth the Moabite. You have to marry her to preserve the name of her dead husband.
And Mr. So-and-so drops the pen immediately.
So walk me through the math on why he backs out so fast, because it seems like a sudden shift.
This is where we have to understand the concept of levirate marriage. If a man died without an heir, his closest relative was legally obligated to marry the widow.
Okay.
The crucial detail is that the first child they had together wouldn't carry the biological father's name. The child would carry the dead man's name.
Wait, so if I'm Mr. So-and-so, I have to pay my own money for the land, I have to feed and house the widow, but the child we produce inherits the land under my dead relative's name.
Yep.
I'm basically acting as a free surrogate and an ATM.
You've got it. It's a terrible financial investment. Mr. So-and-so realizes that marrying a Moabite and having a child who inherits Elimelech's land would drain his resources and muddy his own family's inheritance. It's just too much of a risk.
And to officially back out, he removes his sandal and hands it to Boaz.
Which, out of context, seems like a completely bizarre way to close a contract.
Very weird.
But it was a deeply profound symbol. By handing over his sandal, he is physically and legally giving up his right to ever walk on that land as its owner.
Ah, okay.
But the sources also point out that this act brands him with a lasting public humiliation. In the law of Deuteronomy, the man who refuses to act as a redeemer and raise up an heir for his brother is known as the house of the removed sandal. He is marked forever by his selfishness.
And the theological commentaries take this boardroom drama and elevate it to a staggering cosmic level.
They really do. They view Mr. So-and-so as a living symbol of the old Adamic law, or the Old Covenant.
How so?
Well, the law is technically first in line. It has jurisdiction over humanity, but the law is ultimately powerless to redeem a fallen, impoverished humanity, which is represented in this scene by the Moabite widow. The law cannot save without ruining its own strict standard.
Because it demands perfection.
Right. So Boaz stepping in, willingly taking on the poison pill liability of marrying the marginalized outsider, represents the pure divine grace needed to actually redeem the land and the lineage.
That is so powerful. Resolving a local family dispute in Bethlehem permanently alters world history. And we see the proof of that in the book's concluding genealogy.
Yes.
Because the story doesn't just end with a wedding. It closes with a highly structured 10-generation genealogy starting from Perez and ending with King David.
And in biblical literature, the number 10 always represents ordinal perfection and completed divine order.
Which is funny because the people making up this perfect order are anything but orderly. Let's slow down and look at the first name, Perez. His origin story comes from Genesis 38, involving Judah and his daughter-in-law, Tamar.
Oh, yeah.
It is a messy, bizarre birth story.
Tamar is giving birth to twins. And during the labor, one twin, Zerah, puts his hand out first.
Okay, so he's the firstborn.
Right. The midwife even ties a scarlet thread around his wrist to mark him as the legal firstborn. But shockingly, he pulls his hand back into the womb.
Wait, what? He pulls it back in?
Yeah, he pulls it back, and his brother bursts out instead. And they name the brother who burst out Perez, which literally means the breach.
Wow. The breach. That is an intense way to enter the world.
It's a violent, entirely unexpected entry, and the sources view this breach as a profound prophetic window. It's interpreted as a gap in time, a spiritual opening that allows the 70 Gentile nations represented perfectly by Ruth the Moabite to be grafted into the spiritual lineage of God's people before the ultimate king finally arrives.
And the names that follow Perez in this genealogy are just dripping with symbolism. We have Salmon, whose name means garment. He marries Rahab, the infamous harlot from Jericho who hid the Israelite spies.
Another outsider.
Exactly. Then we arrive at Boaz. Boaz is the 7th generation from Perez. The number 7 universally represents spiritual perfection and completion in Hebrew thought. Then Boaz and Ruth have a son named Obed, who is the 8th generation.
And the number 8 is deeply significant. It points to new creation and superabundance. It's the day after the 7-day week, right? A new beginning. The commentaries even delve into gematria, the ancient practice, where Hebrew and Greek letters double as numbers. The numerical value of the name Jesus in Greek actually adds up to 888. The 8th generation is pointing heavily toward ultimate new creation redemption.
And it culminates with David, the 10th generation, establishing that perfect royal order. I have to push back here, though. Are we finding patterns in the clouds? Is this just apophedia, the human brain trying to find meaning in random data? Or did the author intentionally code a grand historical roadmap into a simple family tree?
It's a fair question, but if we look at how ancient Near Eastern literature operates, we have to recognize that biblical genealogies are highly curated texts. They aren't just biological census data meant for a filing cabinet.
Right, they're not just a phone book.
Exactly, they are theological arguments. The authors curated these specific generations to show God's hand in history. The progression here is unmistakable.
Yeah.
Moving from the violent breach of Perez through the sick and failing generation of Mahlon, arriving at the strength of Boaz, which produces the servant Obed, leading to the king. Well, it is a masterclass in narrative theology.
It really is.
It proves that divine providence actively works through messy, broken, and even scandalous human histories to produce the ultimate king.
So taking all of this in, it's clear from these sources that the Book of Ruth is a perfectly engineered narrative. It takes us on a journey from the devastation of famine and the toxic, incestuous legacy of Moab to the vulnerable margins of a barley field where the edge effect keeps people alive.
Yeah.
And then it walks us through a high-stakes legal battle at the city gates, all to build what the text calls the house of the breach.
And it leaves us with the enduring truth that the most profound acts of redemption almost always happen in the margins, involving the very people society has written off.
I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to ponder based on that. We mentioned that Boaz and Ruth named their son Obed, which means serving.
Right.
The source material briefly mentions another biblical figure much later in history named Obed-Edom. He was a servant, a total outsider, who was brought in to protect the Ark of the Covenant when it was abandoned and dangerous. The entire royal lineage of David and ultimately the Messiah relied completely on bringing a marginalized outsider in to protect and nurture the most sacred promise of the nation.
That's amazing.
So the question for you to mull over is this. What modern outsiders in our own society might currently be holding the keys to our own spiritual or cultural renewal? Who is just waiting for a Boaz to let them glean in the field?
It forces us to completely reevaluate our assumptions about who belongs and who brings value to our communities.
It really does. So the next time you look at that cozy, simple little children's storybook, remember to turn on the black light. You might just find the blueprints to the universe hidden in the margins. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thank you for listening right on till the end of the podcast. You can find show notes and other resources in www.himf.org/DTN085.